Greetings, OOUXers. I am very excited to introduce you to Ren Pope if you don't already know him. So when I first heard Ren Pope on Jorge Arango's podcast, The Informed Life, which I would recommend, I knew I wanted to interview him for myself. So I tracked down Ren and I tracked down some of his presentations on metadata and on ontology. And I just knew we would have fun geeking out about information architecture. And I was not wrong. So Ren's got a background in technical writing, data analysis, knowledge management, and he is currently a senior staff data modeler and ontologist at Etsy. So basically what that means is when a new niche of handmade products emerges, like miniature felted forest creatures or something like that, he's the one that figures out how that category should be sorted and filtered. It is absolutely fascinating work. He has a fascinating story as well, and I sure hope you are ready to nerd out. All right, let's jump into it. Welcome to the Object-Oriented UX podcast, a podcast about tackling complexity head-on, gracefully organizing massive amounts of information, and designing scalable, future-proof, and of course, naturally intuitive object-oriented user experiences. An OUXer is a powerful blend of information architect, business analyst, facilitator, and UX strategist. If this sounds like you or what you aspire to, you are so in the right place. I'm Sophia Prater, UX designer, chief evangelist of Object-Oriented UX, and your host. Let's jump into it. Ren Pope, welcome to the Object-Oriented UX podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
So I found out about you. I sort of met you through Jorge Arango's podcast, which was fascinating to me. And I actually kind of wanted to start there with something that I thought was really interesting about your history. And that's your mom, that your mom was a computer scientist. And I don't want you to date yourself too much, but can you just give us, like, what decade were you kind of coming into yourself?
Well, I'd say it would be the mid 80s.
Okay, mid 80s.
So, yep.
So a woman computer scientist in the mid 80s, that's probably pretty rare. What was that like growing up with your mom as a computer scientist?
Well, it was awesome. I mean, it was awesome to learn from her. It was not awesome because she was a straight A student. So she expected that from me as well, too. So that was kind of a challenge. But I learned a great deal from her in computing and statistics and data, and I just got the bug and have had it ever since.
Was she actively teaching you this material? Was this like, you would get home from school and then there would be like school part 2? Or was it you were just kind of gleaning this and picking it up from the work that she was doing and maybe sometimes talking about over the dinner table?
I'd say it was mainly, well, she started working from home and she brought home a computer. And I had taken a computer class in junior high. So therefore, I was the most computer savvy kind of person because it was the modern computing and everything. So I helped her set up the home computer. And after I accidentally, this is my first foray into DOS, and after hitting delete star.star at the root directory and deleting a lot of stuff, she insisted that I learn a lot more, a lot quicker. So, and I did, and a lot of stuff gleaned off. But where she really started teaching me was she got me an internship at her healthcare company, where I worked in the data architecture shop as a technical writer. And I did a little bit more than technical writing. I actually started looking at the data structures, and that just, sent me further down the path.
And so was she more on that data architecture side as well, or was she programming? Like what was her role versus what you were doing as an intern?
She was more of a data analyst. So she was a master of SAS, the statistical analysis tool. And so the healthcare company would generate and get tons and tons of data and information. And she would do the analysis crunch, the data analysis, statistical analysis, and then to make informed business decisions. And what I was doing, I worked in the data architecture shop. So we scraped all the metadata from the database tables. And my main job was to document that scrape and understand the metadata. But they also kind of let me kind of poke around in the metadata too, and kind of move things around and see how that works. So it was a very valuable lesson.
So this was when you were in your, I guess, late teens, early 20s. You were in high school. I'm sorry, you were in high school when you got this first internship, or this is right after high school?
This is in college, right? So,
Okay.
so I did my college intern at my mom's.
But
I don't know.
when you were in high school in the 80s, you were kind of dabbling
Right,
with computers and
yeah, yes. I guess you said did I have like school 2.0? There was one thing. We had a biology project that needed to do in high school, and my mother helped me build a database to collect data for that biology experiment. So uh, and I was the only geek nerd in the class. I was actually doing it in a database because back then databases were, not as accessible as they are now. So uh, she kind of set up the environment. She kind of told me, "This is a table. This is what you do. This is how you're supposed to build it." So I guess yes, back in high school, that's where she started me in that
wow.
one experience, and that was our base.
So
To,
you were a nerd before it was cool to be a nerd.
definitely, I was the prototypical nerd.
Yeah, so for all the younger folks listening, where it's like it's cool to be a nerd now in high school. Yeah, I mean, even when I was in high school in the 90s, it definitely wasn't cool to be to know a lot about computers. Computers were not cool yet. So kind of moving forward, how did you, this was before people were throwing around the term information architecture. How did you kind of bridge in from data analysis and scrubbing metadata from tables into the world of information architecture?
I guess it started in college. My degree was in technical writing, but I focused on electronic documentation and content really as data. Um, Although we didn't call it back then that, we just called it technical writing. And this is even a little bit before like HTML. The World Wide Web really kicked off about 3 months after I graduated, which I don't know. Either a little bit ticked that I wasn't able to learn more about it in college, but anyways, so I did that, and then my first job that I had coming out of college, I was in the Air Force as an Air Force officer, and I was an information management officer. So I had systems to create and or manage like personnel data and some other things. So then I went to the Air Force's school for computer and information and just kind of further that along.
So this, I'm kind of I'm going off script here a little bit.
Mhm.
So so when I hear information management with the Air Force,
Mhm.
I think UFOs.
Well, the funny thing
Did
is
you have access to any UFO data that you can tell us about?
right. So the very, I guess, ironically, my first duty assignment was Cannon Air Force Base, New Mexico, which was the closest active duty Air Force base to Roswell. But
Mm-hmm.
right, so
So you maybe know some things.
all I know is that New Mexico is awfully flat, and if they're hiding UFOs at Roswell, then they're taking algebra because I believe Roswell Air Force Base is now a community college. So.
Yeah, I don't think the aliens need algebra. I think they're kind of beyond that. They're doing some really advanced calculus, I'm guessing.
Right.
Um, so I bring that up because one of my first like information architecture heavy projects was with the Mutual UFO Network.
Oh, interesting.
And if you think about the data coming in from UFO reports and how messy that data is, but also how complex, and like to really kind of crunch those numbers. I mean, you have crunch that data, you have did you see a craft? Were there entities? Or was it an abduction that you want to report? And then when you get into just saying, okay, we saw a craft. Okay, how many people saw it? And then all the shapes and sizes and how far away it was from you. If you want to see one of the worst web forms on the internet, you can go to report a UFO for mufon.com/report a UFO. It is just a bunch of check boxes. It's like a sea of check boxes.
Wow.
But yeah, that was a fun project. So I'm looking over here, by the way, because all my notes are over here. Mm-hmm. So when you were at University of Baltimore, you were focused on something I'm pulling from your LinkedIn, content and navigation modeling. And this was like back in like 2008 era. So what did content and navigation modeling look like then? Does it look the same as what it looks like now, or were you doing something kind of different?
I'd say it looks a little bit now. I guess for content modeling, it was taking. So, for example, the internet has kind of reduced content to sound bites. I mean, heck, we have Twitter where we get it down to 130 characters. But I was interested in being able to do the architecture of very long form documents. So, if you had a large report, a book, something of that nature, how do you turn that into an electronic document? This goes back to my undergraduate. How do you make that into a online presence and make it highly usable, searchable, discoverable, all of those things? So that was the content modeling part. And then at the time, professionally, I was doing a lot of that where my job pretty much consisted of doing that, is understanding people were writing long form documents and needed to put them online. And we just didn't want to put them online as a PDF and have the user say, okay, to the reader go, okay, just read, 35 pages, but really giving that reader a good understanding of what was in that document and how to find that right information without having to read those 35 pages.
Interesting. So do you read a lot of digital books? Are you a Kindle user?
I have been in the past. Mm-hmm. I actually use my Kindles, that I burned them out, and I just haven't gotten a new one yet. But okay. I'm all about so I don't have a Kindle, but if I can reach over here gracefully, I have a Remarkable, which is a digital notepad. So that's more of the writing experience than the reading experience. But I thoroughly enjoy Kindle, especially the X-ray. Like the Amazon X-ray architecture is just amazing, where they overlay like metadata on top of content. You can do that with their movies, but you can also do that on the Kindle. So you get access to all of the characters, the plot, trivia, things that it's almost like if an author wants to do like a director's cut of the book, if you will, they can do that in the X-ray platform. So I thoroughly enjoy Kindle, and that's kind of like part of that navigation modeling, being able to navigate to external content and mapping it back in the same space that the actual content is in. So
is there anything that you are not yet seeing in the design of ebooks that you would like to be seeing, or that you feel like is coming in the future?
Well, I just say that type of experience, like X-ray. So being able to extract out those entities, like people, places, things, being able to do that so a lot of times it's haphazard, where they'll just have like a search list, and the application will, as it's going through the document, will hit that search term and then add a link. Mm-hmm. But to actually have a better architecture to say, here are all the entities, here are all, providing taxonomies in the background to say, this entity is a person, show me all the people that are around that. This is a concept like Christmas, so richer architectures and environments. And again, it's hard because the long form document is dying with the advent of the internet, or not the advent, but the continuation of the internet, the maturity of the internet. So to have those kind of type of experiences where you're reading large volumes is kind of going away, and I wish it wouldn't. I wish it would stay around, but
I read, so Mark Manson recently wrote something about how actually people are going much shorter and also much deeper, but that the medium form is actually what's dying. That
correct.
like books, I mean, is there data actually showing that people are reading fewer books?
No, but I think it's more of the online presence. So if you were to take a
Mm.
look at the internet in 1997, you would have pages that were scrolled and scrolled and scrolled and scrolled. People would have put on, like online documents, and not just as a PDF, but actual HTML where you could give a little bit more interaction. But now to find experiences like that, they're kind of going away. So I don't think the book is dying per se. I just think the online long narrative
Mm-hmm.
is kind of going away, especially as we're going into mobile. I mean, everything is. I mean, heck, we can't even get a video past 5 seconds with something like Snapchat. So
Right. So I was thinking just kind of doing some quick brainstorming on what might be really cool to see in ebooks or Kindle books. So and tell me if this already exists because I'm very much a paper reader. I've never had a Kindle before.
you should
There's
try it.
what's that?
You should try it.
I know. I'm actually the highlights and having different kinds of highlights and then being able to export your highlights. That sounds really useful because I'm definitely an active reader. Lots of notes in the margins, and then I, have to go back over and take them or type them out in Evernote, which does help kind of solidify some of the concepts versus highlighting and exporting. But
Mm-hmm.
one thing I was thinking of is like how like actually books could be connected to each other through character or through like take a historical character, Alexander Hamilton just came up in my head. So you have Alexander Hamilton mentioned in one book. Like, can it actually extrapolate and say, okay, here's 6 other books that you might like, or like kind of jump from book to book?
Right.
Uh,
Yes, that's one, and two. So Alexander Hamilton. That's a good thing. So when having that semantic understanding of Alexander Hamilton, are you talking about the person, the play, um,
mhm.
the high school in Iowa named Alexander
Yeah.
Hamilton High School? So being aware, so when the reader is reading about the play, and it could link you out to where it's played, maybe the Wikipedia article on the play or the musical, not the actual person, but also giving the context. Well, the musical is based on the actual person. Oh, and then not only is there Alexander Hamilton, the real person, there's the play, but then there's the character in the musical who is distinctly different than the actual person, historical person. So do you want to know more about the character in the play? I keep on saying play, musical. Uh, so being able to distinctly identify what you're reading about and being able to link out, and that's the navigation modeling. There is getting, now that you model the content, model exactly what you can navigate to, and different types. So, for example, if you have people that you have identified in your text, you may want to always link out to Wikipedia, YouTube, and another type of resource. If it's a product, you may want to link out to all your e-commerce kind of sites. So
Mhm.
um,
And the user actually might want to control that as well and decide, how do you put user settings over this to say, I always want to pull from Wikipedia versus I always want to pull from, I prioritize this source over this source. So we're not there yet, right? With that kind of
yeah,
advanced modeling.
no, we're not there. We're not there yet. But I can see something like that in the future.
Yes, definitely. So I'm gonna ask you a question that I got recently about this, because definitely this is what I teach as well, is let's hyper connect everything. Let's make sure we understand the nature of these things, the difference between the historical character and the fictional character and the play, versus the movie versus and really,
Mhm.
identifying your objects, and making sure that they're labeled correctly and understanding that this is an instance of that versus an instance of this. So, and then of course modeling the hell out of that, so you really understand how these things sit in context, because so often things are defined by their context, and how they relate to other things.
Right.
The question that I got recently was, when are we over connecting? So when are we actually, doing the users a disservice by giving them so many options? um I had my answer, but I would like to hear what you would say. I mean, specifically in this instance of reading an ebook, and all of a sudden you can be connected to so many different things versus just, sitting down and reading through the book.
Right. Exactly. So one, I think, is that user choice that you brought up is, for me, give me 3,000 choices. I don't mind. I'll
Mhm.
wade through them. Someone who is very focused on the narrative, give them the ability to dial back. So I'm going to use, I guess, the duck on water analogy. Um, so when a duck is on the water and you see it, it's gracefully gliding along the water. But if
Mhm.
you're underwater, you would see the feet paddling away like crazy to make it just move that smoothly. So I think whatever system or architecture you have, it should be like the duck's feet. It should be crazy. All the connections should be there, but what you expose to the user is dictated by that user requirement and experience that you need. So
Right.
I err on connect everything correctly, and
Yeah,
then
we're on the same page there, so to speak. So my answer to that, and I think that I gave kind of a cop out answer, but my answer to that was, first we need to differentiate, connect, like, what is the user in exploratory mode, or is the user in get shit done mode? So for example, if we know that the user is in that get shit done mode, they're like going through a funnel. Let's say they're in their checkout, and I think that's kind of where the question was coming from. Like, do we really want to be like giving people options to get out of a flow that we have put them in? And my answer to
mhm,
that was like, let's say I'm in that checkout and I'm looking at a product, and I've seen checkouts like this before where I'm looking at a product, and if I want to go back to the details of that product, like, wait a second,
mhm,
did I get the right size? Let me go back to my size chart. They don't let me do that. I'm kind of, the walls have been put up and I am in checkout now, and there is no way out. I need to open up a new tab in my browser, search for that product again to get back to the detail page to, reinforce, to make sure that I know what I'm getting. And to me, my answer is, that's a dark pattern. Like, we've put them in a funnel. We're saying this is the flow that we've designed for you and you're stuck
mhm,
in it, versus giving them the option to connect to any type of object that might be within that flow, whatever that flow is. Now, we don't want to give them a
mhm.
lot of shiny things that they could accidentally click on and kick themselves out of a process,
Right.
but we should still be connecting. Would you agree with that, or do you have anything to add to that?
All right. Yeah. So that's a kind of like an experience level, um, and and yes, giving people the understanding, and I guess that's looking at the modeling that experience. It's like what are all the things that a person can do when they're actually engaging the system, and then being able to kind of predict that and give them the opportunity to do that. When it comes to kind of like information that's within the system, or that the system is kind of managing, if it's external, if we keep using the Alexander Hamilton, there's certain truths that will always be there. Alexander Hamilton's a person, a musical, a character, could be a school or a landmark. There's many different things. So being able to identify those and record those, even though you may not use it in a particular scenario, it's still good to have them, because a specific user may need to use that, and to be able to have an adaptive experience so that they can expose that for themselves, that another user may not need. One user may never want to know how many high schools in the United States, are named after Alexander Hamilton. But there may be those 3 people that say, I really, really want to know that from the experience that you're you're going from. So asserting truth, I think, is typically always good. You always have to understand that system resources are limited, and if you try to make every single connection in the world, that's not reasonable. But
yeah, if you're connecting to everything, then you're basically connecting to nothing. If you're connecting to everything. So I absolutely love that. You have to expose the truth. And this is something that I talk about all the time, is sometimes, and I would like to hear what you think about this, that this idea that as information architects, we're not necessarily designing the architecture. We are doing a lot of detective work to figure out what is the truth of this system. And then how do we communicate that truth of the system with clarity?
Right, exactly. So I say that, a lot of times we say we're doing architecture where we're designing something, to build it. I always go back to the traditional architecture of a building. You start off, before you even lay the concrete, you start off with making the designs based on the requirements of the customer and do all of those things. But a lot of times I think it's more information archaeology than it is information architecture.
Yes.
Where you kind of put on your pit hat and you kind of have to chip away at the old, stone and dirt to find out the truth of what the heck, you're working on a system that already exists, and figure out what their intent was and where everything is buried, and expose that, and then, repurpose it. So,
oh my gosh, I love that. I often call it detective work, but I think that archaeology is such a better analogy. So often I do feel like I'm less of an information architect and more of an information archaeologist. Like, what is happening here? What is the story here? What is the truth of this business? And what is the truth of how the user is thinking about this business or this problem domain? And how do we basically, so when they go into this digital environment that is inherently going to be unintuitive because it's digital, and we are physical creatures that have evolved without the digital world. How do we sort of mimic that truth as much as possible, so that when a user comes into that environment, they're like, oh yeah, here are my things. And they're connected in a way that they connect in the real world around me.
Right, exactly. Right. And that's the big thing is, we're kind of the architects of that virtual dimension, and that has problems in itself, because we're creating the physics and everything that goes along with it, and translating something. It's like perspective. When you have a cube and you want to draw it, and taking it from a 3D cube and translating that into a 2D drawing, we're kind of mapping the physical world into this virtual dimension, and that has challenges on its own.
Hey y'all, just a quick interruption. As of this recording, we are in the midst of cohort 4 of the OUX certification, and enrollment for cohort 5 won't open up until early summer 2021. But you can dig into all the certification video content, all the templates, all the resources by grabbing access to the OUX Masterclass. And if, after going through the masterclass, you want to get certified, you'll be able to apply the cost of the masterclass to your enrollment in cohort 5. So you can kind of think about it like a down payment. Once you enroll in the masterclass, you'll get access to the OUX Academy, and over the course of 10 weeks, about 2 to 3 hours of video lectures will be released to you each week. But you can consume that content totally at your own pace. You'll have lifetime access to it. So if it takes you 20 weeks to go through it, that's totally fine. You're not just gonna get video content. You're gonna get checklists. You're gonna get exercises. You're gonna get assignments and tons of valuable resources. Basically everything you need to become an expert complexity wrangler. Again, you get everything that a certification cohort gets, just minus all those personal touches. The camaraderie of the cohort in the OUX forum, access to the OUX mentors, the one-on-ones with me, as well as me answering all your questions in the forum and in office hours, and of course the actual certification and a profile on OUX.com. So for all of that, you'll need to actually join a cohort, but you don't have to wait. You can start becoming that complexity wrangling, stakeholder whispering, IA facilitator extraordinaire now. You can start saving yourself and your team countless hours of rework. And you can start saving your user from the extraneous complexity that OUX helps you avoid. So go to OUX.com/certification to learn more. From there, you can get on the waitlist for cohort 5, as well as get yourself access to that entire video library that is the OUX Masterclass. Still not sure if you're ready to take the plunge? Go check out the testimonials on OUX.com. Okay, back to the show. So do you have any, this is a question I've been asking a lot on the podcast. Do you have, so as we are creating the physics and often breaking the laws of physics that our users' brains are used to, that's the point of technology, is to break the laws of physics. You can be in two places at once. We can have this conversation across hundreds of miles. I can search the Amazon warehouse in like less than a second. Like, I'm breaking the laws of physics basically by doing that. So it turns us into these superheroes, but it can also confuse the hell out of us. So how do we know like when to break what laws of physics, or is it about bending the laws of physics? But like, what would you say? Are there any good rules of thumb that you use to know when we can break those laws or redesign them?
Well, I think it's having a clear understanding of what you're designing, and when you design it, that you may be creating something that's never been there before. So a good example would be, think about the first time a file folder on a computer was made. All the things that we take for granted now: delete a file, delete a folder, move a folder, move a file, open a file, open a folder. They may not, if you talk to somebody, from 100 years ago, they may not have, if you were to say those notions or things, they wouldn't understand what action to take. So when you, as a designer, create this cool thing, a folder, and you have to understand, for the first how many ever iterations, you're going to have to teach people what it means to interact with the virtual notion of a folder.
And how that's different, because I'm looking at you've got some folders behind you, and their properties and their capabilities are different than the folders on the computer. And we use, the original object-oriented UIs was desktop, where we had, it was the folder it was using that metaphor of the desktop, and we had that trash can. And I love the example of like, one example of breaking the laws of physics in a unintuitive way is, you remember when, to delete a folder, you would drag it to the trash can.
Right.
But to eject a disk, you would also drag it to the trash can.
Right.
And
right.
It was scary every single time. You're like, really? Is this how I'm going to eject the disk? Oh, please don't delete everything off of this disk.
Right.
Because it was basically, so that I would say is one of those things. Like, one thing, modes, I guess. Modes is something that is inherently work. There's going to be problems with modes as far as intuition, because often things in the real world don't have these modes where, like,
right,
you have a trash can, you throw stuff in the trash can, it's all going to get deleted.
Right. And the other thing too is that's unique about, designing for the web or digital experiences, is that the medium that you design in is the same medium as the production. So to use the building analogy again, you're going to draw a plan out on paper, and then you may make a model at scale, and then there's the actual building. So that's 3 different mediums. If I build a wireframe in an online tool, it's probably using HTML in the background. So you're really using the same thing to build the design that you're going to build the actual product with. So sometimes things can get confusing as to when you're talking about the real thing or the actual design itself.
Right. Right. And some people would talk about the issues with that. There's, there's proponents of designing in the browser that all designers should. I don't even know if I want to open up that bag of worms right now, but do you have any thoughts on this? That like the designer should be using the medium of the actual of the web. If you're designing for the web, you should be doing all of your wireframes in HTML and CSS. What do you say to that?
No, yeah, you shouldn't. And in some large scale systems where everything is dynamic anyways, and you really just need to block things out, you may need something that's a little bit more comprehensive. Additionally, with the design, then now you're, unless some sort of application is inherently doing it in CSS and HTML, but you can't have design metadata like notes and other things around that, a workflow to get it from one designer to another. So I say use the tool at hand. I've done designs before in like PowerPoint,
Right.
because I was on site and I couldn't get any design tool approved to be on their system. So
Oh yeah. I've
so
done it in Keynote. I 100% agree. And I just know that like you're multitasking too much. You're thinking about like, you should have good knowledge on what is possible, so that you're not designing crazy stuff.
right,
But you
exactly.
should definitely, I think for me personally, designing in code or in the browser would be way too much. I would be so hamstringed by thinking about where my semicolon is supposed to go versus
Right.
thinking about what's the best user experience.
Right. Now, I will say this, if you don't mind. Even if you design outside of the browser, I am a big proponent of tools that translate into, let's just call it like the proto HTML proto code. I'm not a big fan of what I call wallware, where you make all these pretty wireframes and you can show it to your stakeholders. They love it. They put it up on the wall, and that's all you can do with it. So I am a big proponent of being able to translate into it, but and you don't have to inherently, start off designing in the browser.
Right. Yeah, I get that. And I agree as well. And a lot of tools are doing that. So so now we're on the subject. What tools are you using at Etsy?
Well, first of all, if we're going to talk about Etsy, I just want to make sure that I say that, I'm purely speaking on my own behalf, and these are my own thoughts, not Etsy's. But right now, the job that I'm in, I'm not really doing that much design work, so I wouldn't say I have any tools in particular.
Okay.
But we have like our own in-house kind of like design suite that we use, and it's browser based and what have you. So, and truly all I do is use it to do some like very high level kind of like design work. We have designers that are much more user interface focused than I am. So I'm more of that bridge between, the data folks in the back. And I will say I do use CMap a lot.
Okay.
So that's like a concept mapping tool.
All right. I've never played with that one. CMap. All right.
Yeah, it's great. It's out of the University of West Florida, I believe it is.
Okay.
I should know. I literally worked right next door to them, but I think it's the University of West Florida that has it, and it's I think it's open source. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that, but you can. Then they think they do have a commercial license. I can't remember how it was done, but you can download it and personally use it for free. And I guess they just ask for a donation, but it's a really good tool. It's very fast. How people at conferences take sketch notes.
Yeah.
While I'm in a meeting, I take what I call data notes. And, when I just quickly put stuff and arrange it in CMap. And then after the meeting, we can all take a look at it and see if I captured kind of like the associations and concepts that people were talking about in the meeting.
Ooh, data notes and CMap. So let's back up here actually and talk a little bit about your role at Etsy. So you are senior staff data modeler and ontologist, and this is not a common job title. a lot of people don't have this. I'm sure you have fun at dinner parties explaining it, but can you what are you actually doing?
So the bottom line is I am describing all the things that are important to Etsy.
Okay.
So, Etsy is a e-commerce site that provides vendors, sellers to showcase handmade and vintage items. Some of them are very unique, very and very niche. And then there's buyers that need to browse our catalog to find and discover what they want to buy. So my job is to be able to describe those very unique niche items and some of the other concepts around them, so that buyers can easily find what they're looking for, or discover something that they didn't think that they knew that they wanted or needed, but can present it to them.
So the things that are important to Etsy and that kind of encompasses also the things that are important to those buyers, or this new niche of things are now being sold, like custom stained glass wall panels. Like all of a sudden now, okay, now we need to have length and width and thickness, which was not data that. So in this particular niche category, there's a whole new set of metadata that needs to be sorted and filtered by.
Exactly, and understanding what's the right metadata at the right time. So, a buyer would be very interested in color and all of those dimensions, so it knows that fits in their house where they want it. But say for shipping, you really don't need to know the color. So being able to present the right metadata at the right time and understand the context of the metadata. So like the metadata, if you will.
Oh yeah, I definitely want to talk about metadata, but first, can you give some like fun examples? Like, what are some like super crazy niche categories that you've had to kind of build out the metadata for?
Let's see. A lot of them are very unusual. There's a lot of things that are themed. So, like if you think like cosplay and things of that nature. So there's a lot of imaginations, and you can get some pretty interesting things. But yeah, so you have to think about, how it relates to broader categories. So like costumes, if you will, but also other themes like, is this a comic book type thing, or does it involve like a certain niche with like music? So those are some of the more interesting kind of things that you have to take a look at.
So cosplay, you might have to connect it to, let's say it's a cosplay outfit. You might connect it to certain like, I guess characters.
Mm-hmm.
And then also you need size, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And then you need, is it like, I mean, do you put gender in there, color, like?
Right. Yeah. All of that color. It might be, different themes. Like I said, like comic, is it like one that's for comic books or movies, or, and then, there's even some like music types that people dress up and for. So, like electronic dance music, where people have like certain styles and costumes. So there's just a lot of different things that you just take a look at and see how they relate to each other. And if you buy the things may be sold separately, but they complement each other. So being able to make those associations as well too. So just a lot of things to think about.
So let's say I'm dressing up. I want to dress up as Six from Battlestar Galactica,
Mm-hmm.
and which has been a dream of mine for a while. So I want that red dress.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of, let's say this comes up, let's say Battlestar Galactica has another resurgence, and all of a sudden you're like, I mean, let me guess at what the process is at a high level, and you tell me where I'm wrong. So a trend bubbles up, and let's say it's Battlestar Galactica cosplay, which before maybe you haven't like that created a whole taxonomy around, and now it's like, okay, a lot of people are selling this now, or a lot of people are searching for it maybe. So we need to actually create a custom set of metadata specifically for Battlestar Galactica cosplay. So how does the research process start? Like, how do you start figuring out what that set of metadata is going to be? Are you talking to the buyers, the sellers, both? And kind of how do you find out what metadata is most important?
Right. So it's a mixture of all of the above. So you do user research, you do a little bit of like literature review type research to find out, get the ground truth, like who is six, things of that nature, and then see what's trending, to see what's important, for that. So, are there accessories that go with that you may want to, have as expose that or float that up as offering. So,
Oh, so then you're connecting product to product. So,
right.
All right, you're looking for the six outfit. Here's the six outfit, but like here's also the replica of the gun that she carries or something like that.
Right, exactly.
Amazing. So can you give us a tip on, some good interview questions you might ask? So if you're on the phone with a Battlestar Galactica cosplay fan, and you're interviewing them, like how do you make sure not to ask leading questions to like get into what would you want to be searching by?
Well, I first of all start off with freeform. Just tell me, because I'm pretty sure somebody who does cosplay is, well into what they want to do. So tell me about six, and as they start talking, when they come up with salient points, then that's when you start asking more detailed questions, and possibly questions where you have to say a yes or no, to kind of get those ideas. And then as some of that, the same things come up over and over again across your research, then you can have a good idea, like, oh, that might be important. So like it has to be read. If it's well, it has to be read to be authentic. So you might have, authentic color equals red, then there might be variants. There might be let's say there's a huge six following in Hawaii, and there's like the Hawaiian themed one, or
oh my gosh,
so
that's amazing.
things of that nature. So, and if it's big enough and significant enough, then you might want to model that as well too, to what makes Hawaiian six different than standard authentic six. So
That's my Halloween costume this year. It's inspired by this conversation. It's the theoretical Hawaiian six from my conversation with Ren Pope.
Excellent. Well, we take Halloween pretty seriously at Etsy, so that might be
I can
that might be it.
imagine. I can imagine. If I actually do it, I'll send you a picture.
Excellent.
So once you found this set of information, you're like, this is how we need to be. This is how we need to be structuring a new Battlestar Galactica cosplay product. All I'm guessing there's probably existing cosplay products out there. How do you go about with the kind of the governance of those instances? How do you go? Like, do you contact the buyers and say, hey, you need to like go and retag all your 60 items that you're selling? Do y'all manually do it?
It's a mixture of both. I mean, we really try to work with our sellers so that, I'll call it the Goldilocks amount of information. They want to sell products. They don't want to be metadata managers. So, so we try to help them out in every way. And if there's new nuances to certain products, we try to help take care of that for them. But so it's a little bit of both, but that's one of the reasons why we're trying to make these models on the back end is just to make it very, very easy for not only the sellers to be able to input and maintain their metadata, but also for the buyers to make it very easy. So like when they're searching through filters and things of that nature, that the metadata and the filters match up.
And I mean, I'm sure it's a seller would probably be very motivated to maintain that because that's going to help them sell their products, right? So,
well, think of it like maintaining your car. I mean, everybody wants to have a well-maintained car, but you really, really want to drive it. So there's a lot
Yeah.
of times where, people don't check the oil all that often. So, people need help with having a little sticker up there that says, next service change is at, like, 30,000 miles. And it would be great if somebody could come to your house and change your oil for you and things of that nature. So we want to offload as much as possible from the seller. So and that's one of the things that's what I'm looking at, is being able to help that.
Okay.
So, and by being able to make some of those descriptions on the back end, that can help alleviate some of that from the seller of having to put in so much information.
That's so fascinating. That sounds like a lot of fun.
It's
Is it like,
tons
I
of
mean,
fun.
it's like you just get a new category and you're like, all right, we got to figure out how to structure this new category.
Yeah, yeah. So
Wow.
definitely. So mainly, I work with our taxonomists and some um, other knowledge management type folks, and we have a fun time when we review stuff. It's really cool. I like it.
So let's talk about metadata.
Okay.
So what is your definition of metadata, and can you give us some examples?
Yeah, sure. So metadata is so I think that's more of a business term than a technical term. I know a lot of data architects, database architects would kind of like hold their nose up at the term, but really it's metadata about metadata, or data about
Yep.
metadata, and that's just to be able to characterize it. And sometimes that's done through facets. Um, Sometimes that's just done through like attribute grouping, if you kind of get more into that data architecture side. But it really, if you want to know all of your geographic data, so addresses, cities, towns, everything that you have, and be able to manage that, you could group that into kind of like geographic, and that's your quote unquote metadata.
Mm.
Um, so
What about like if this field is required or not? What would you consider that? Is that metadata? Like the title of the product is a required field. The fact that it is required, but this other field is not required.
Yes. So when you're modeling what your actual piece of data is, yes, it would be data about that field. Is it required? How many can you have?
Mm.
Um,
Is
uh,
this a multi-select or a single select?
Correct. Does it have enumerations like a controlled list you can pick from? Is it, domain range kind of constraints, kind of things of that nature? So,
Yeah. So that's so in the process that I teach, we call it attribute requirements. Same thing,
mhm.
metadata. It's the requirements around each individual attribute. And
Right.
we what about like conditional? Like how do you get into conditional logic? Like if they select this, then there's these other three fields. Or if this object is of this type, like let's say, for example, it's a digital download versus a physical product.
Right. So it depends on, and that depends always sounds like a cop out, but it depends on the architecture of your system. So if you can have that as like persistent data, then you would model that out on the data, but that might be more business logic and how to process the data that's going. So it depends on what you're doing, why, is your system real time, or is it something where you're referencing things? If it's real time, then you may want to have it kind of like as business logic, that your code is actually doing those cases to figure out where data goes and what's exposed. If it's more referential, you may bake that into your kind of like data model.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it all depends.
We know we have all of these fields. We have all these new fields for our Battlestar Galactica cosplay. So if the product is Battlestar Galactica cosplay, these are some extra attributes that we need to give to the seller so that we can then and then when a buyer is typing in something BSG,
Mhm.
we know to provide these extra attributes as sorts or filters. Um, how are you documenting? How are you capturing that? What do your artifacts look like? Is this all in CMAP? How are you capturing that metadata?
Right. So there's different stages. There's like the design stage, and that's where I'd capture it in CMAP. But then there's the actual physical system that's going to manage that for you. So design in something lightweight like CMAP or some other tool. Vet that design, and then it's actually making a model in the system. So most systems like ontology systems, are dealing with, I guess, legacy systems. I mean, they still do it, but the legacy way of doing it was like an XML, RDF type thing, and then we've gone on to JSON. I know I'm getting a little bit geeky here in some of the technical
That's
stuff,
okay.
but and then now everything is in graph databases. So and I love graph databases. I think I was born for graph databases. It's just the way to be able to not only model something but to store the information. So yeah, that
So
I
like
guess.
Synaptica or something like that, like a knowledge graph type.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. All right. So my last question for you, I know we just have a few minutes left. This is a question that I love asking information
Mhm.
architects is how do you organize your life? What are your what are some
Well,
tools you use?
please don't look at what's going on behind me.
I'm
So
sure it's very organized chaos.
yeah, what's going on behind me? That's definitely not organized chaos. And
Just chaos.
small disclosure is that I'm getting ready to move. So and I had to move from my work office. So I've always had a work office. And when went completely virtual, uh, my home office was never large enough to have everything that I had in my work office. But so what do I do to organize personally? Well, I use a knowledge management program called the Brain. Love it because it's graph based, and it's got some pretty cool constraints on it. So you don't it's not like completely free form. It's very focused in the way that you in hierarchical, but ways to kind of break that hierarchy too. So I use the Brain. Let's see. What are some other things that I do?
So you're using that to organize personal life and work life?
Um, for the most part, in the past, I've used it for work life. Just in my current work environment, it's just kind of a little bit hard to do. But yeah, everything in my personal life. Like I've got maybe 4 or 5 brains that I use. That's the notion, the goal. So I have about 4 or 5 brains that I
It's like
use.
offloading your brain, like you have your brain, but then you have these other brains that are being,
It,
oh,
it,
cool.
yeah, exactly. So it's my personal document. So I inherited pretty much all of my family's like personal documents. So I've scanned them all. I scanned about 50 years worth of documents and threw them into the Brain.
Oh.
Um, and all my interests are there. Thought processes, things that I don't want to forget. So I think that's the way I organize, and that's organized chaos. So my Brain. So
I'm very excited to look into that. Yeah, thanks for sharing.
mhm.
So before we wrap up, anything else that you want to leave us with? Anything that you're working on? Any conference talks you have going coming up? Anything else that we need to that the listeners of Object-Oriented UX podcast should know about Ren Pope?
uh, now, well, the Information Architecture Conference is coming up.
Oh,
It's
okay.
going to be all online. So looking forward to that. I am everybody says this, but I am hopefully, I'm going to say 45 to 50% done on writing a book on about all of this. So,
Yeah.
and I continue to do kind of like the Ontology Dojo, where I try to make ontology a little bit more accessible to everybody, and use ontological thinking. And shout out to Jesse Duvernay for helping me kind of come up with that concept and design. Uh, so yeah, those are that in this weird, crazy pandemic world. It's enough to keep me busy.
Awesome. Well, we will link to all of that. And definitely once your book is out or available for pre-order, let me know. And I will make sure to push that on into the newsletter. So I'm sure everybody that's interested in object-oriented UX will be interested in your book. We'll probably book club it too.
Excellent.
We love doing our book club. So
it's
2022? 2022 we'll book club it?
Knock on wood.
Okay.
So,
all right.
right. It's pretty unique.
We're on the edge of our seats.
I think you'll enjoy it.
Ren, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a fascinating conversation. I learned a lot, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
All right. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. Thank you so much for listening. I truly hope you enjoyed this episode. Please visit objectorientedux.com/podcast for show notes. Our soundtrack is Fighter by Ruby Vell, courtesy of Sugaroo Records. Happy OUXing!